AskReddit by algorithm Omega. What's a civilization ending scenario that most people aren't aware of? A slow burn collapse is much more likely than a single major event to cause something major. You're absolutely right. It's not going to be a single event. It'll be multiple systems failing at once. https://yahoo.be/aq4g7v-xicpch-msxt9hco_pz close bracket comma several minor crises converging like a rogue wave. Crop failure leads to political unrest while there happens to be a particularly incompetent leader in charge, which leads to war, which leads to limited nuclear strike. Meanwhile an earthquake strikes, and then there's a fuel shortage. After that a minor solar flare knocks out electrical systems for only a few days, but it's at a really inopportune time. It won't look like a world-ending event. It will be a gradual decline in living standards over years or generations. The Romans experience a near civilization-ending crisis in the 3rd century, due to multiple destabilizing events hitting around the same time: war, plague, inflation, political breakdown, famine. But it didn't happen overnight. It was slow. It took years for the system to collapse. It also took years and multiple leaders to diagnose and remedy the problems, but they did get there. As a kid I learned that if a gamma ray burst is coming right at us we really can't do anything about it, we'd just get fried. Kept me up for a few nights. If it's any consolation, if a GRB were to hit the earth, we wouldn't really know until it did. It would all be over in a matter of seconds if you're on the right side of the planet, and minutes at most on the non-facing side. Corn virus. 20% of human civilization's calories, right there. As someone allergic to corn I'm surprised it's only 20%. 90% of the grocery store is off limits. Peak phosphorus, https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/peak_phosphorus. It's an important resource for production of fertilizer, and dwindling supplies could have a significant impact on global food security. Maybe an exaggeration to say that it would end civilization, but it could be a contributing factor to a cascade of problems that have a devastating impact on modern civilization. Food shortages are usually self-correcting. A gamma ray burst could fry our planet at any moment with zero warning. Which means you should not waste time worrying about it because no one can do anything about it. The likelihood of this is astronomically low, as there is nothing close enough to us that is capable of emitting something like that for at least a few billion years if I recall. The Big Rip is one of the most interesting possible ways for the universe to die because it happens on scales a human could meaningfully experience. You go from a perfectly functional solar system, in an endless void, to the end of all matter in the span of a couple of months. First the planets drift away from the star, but you could survive if you have a way of producing heat. Then the planets and the sun explode as gravity can no longer hold them together. If you're in a spaceship, you can survive for a few more minutes before your atoms are ripped apart by space itself. How very comforting before bed lol. I rarely see the media being concerned about water. Water scarcity droughts have the potential to severely fuck up entire stretches of land, triggering climate refugee waves. So there is some danger in the foreseeable future regarding global political stability, if for example California, parts of the Middle East, Africa become partially uninhabitable. But desalination technology powered by renewable energy is catching up massively, and water itself is extremely abundant here on Earth. I'm confident this is a problem technology can fix to some degree. Edit. Over time. Midterm, this is a global problem. As people have correctly pointed out, there are still some technical hurdles to overcome. But prices will drop and systems will get much more efficient. It's about water. The most important thing for all of us to survive this will always be a global research priority. Solar flare knocking out electric grids. Not only restarting them from a black start is highly complicated, if the transformers are fried, there aren't enough replacements, and to manufacture more we need, you guessed it, electricity. The estimations are that a solar flare on the level of Carrington event, which happened not 2 centuries ago, would cause trillions in damages and set back civilization for decades. Wouldn't you give the made transformers to transformer production facilities? The aliens finally coming back to harvest their livestock of humans. Edit, my first comment to get over 1k, thanks all. Jaffa, Cree. There's a fear that the trend of human body temp decreasing over time will expose us to more rates of fatal fungal infections. Most people are now less than 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. This is why I choose to live in a constant state of inflammation SMH. The possible breakdown of the Atlantic Gulf Stream, edited to Amag collapse. Americans don't typically realize that Ibiza, Spain and the French Riviera are at about the same latitude as New York. Half of France and Germany and all of Britain are above the latitude of Maine. The Gulf of Mexico, plus the Caribbean Sea, is the space heater that makes Northern Europe habitable. Conversely, Northern Europe, plus the Arctic, is the air conditioner that keeps the sea life of the Caribbean from dying of heat and low oxygen. The last thing we really want on this side of the world is identical temperatures in Algeria and North Carolina, France and Maine, England and Quebec. Prions. CWD is pervasive in air in pockets across the country, and is taken up into plants and still infective. I don't know how this can be true without us eating it downstream in the food system. Not sure how much this has been researched, but I would bet we're eating it. Hasn't jumped to humans that we're aware of, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Cultural victories are a little arcane in how they work, so people avoid them in lieu of conquest or diplomatic victories. It's not that complex. Just mass produce rock bands. Big volcanic eruption. Winter for a couple of years. So very cold in winter and still snowing in summer. No food. Energy shortages. Massive refugee streams to less affected areas. Etc. Not killing all humans, but certainly this civilization. Small but realistic chance. Was reading about the Yellowstone caldera a couple years ago and was interested to read that estimates are that the ashes alone would be heavy enough to collapse buildings in nearby states. The disappearance of bees. I just started a new colony last week, if that makes you feel any better. Topsoil collapse. The current shitty monocrop style of farming is slowly degrading the soil. Will eventually become a problem. Crop failure. And X200B. But this is also why the USDA pays farmers to overproduce and then pays them to destroy surplus. It's better to have it and not need it than it is to need it and not have it. We consume WAYYYY more than we need to. If we did have a problem, they'd ration consumption and tap the surplus until we could engineer a way around it. I'm not sure how many people realize it, but if rabies evolved to be airborne, we would have an actual zombie apocalypse scenario on our hands. Congratulations, this is the first one that legitimately scares the shit out of me. Grey goo. A successfully created self-replicating nanobot that can consume biomass could trigger a chain reaction in which most of the planet is quickly consumed. Essentially Horizon Zero Dawn, but less animal robots and more mass extinction. Chronic wasting disease spreads from deer to people. It's caused by prions, which I'm not remotely qualified to comment on, but the gist is that they are nearly impossible to destroy. Apparently they can't even be destroyed by incineration level heat. I'm certain there is someone who can elaborate on this further in a far better way. From what I learned about prions from another post years ago, prions are misfolded proteins that basically run amok doing whatever destructive thing they like in your body. They are, as you said, incredibly difficult to destroy. They can be denatured, but it's never a certainty. Showing your continent to the Spanish. Well, no one would expect that. Insect decline. I'm sure a lot of people know it's an issue, but I don't think people realize quite how precarious it is. When I was a young lad, my family drove from our home in the southeast of England to Scotland. We went to see family on the Isle of Skye. By the time we got there, the number plate was covered in bugs. Seriously covered. Had speed cameras existed back then, they wouldn't have been able to read the number plate. Midges galore. Fast forward to last year, my family did the same journey. We put some sticky tape over the front number plate because we were doing a community research thing for my daughter's school. The tape was needed to catch the bugs as cars are more aerodynamic now than they were 30 odd years ago. When we had completed the journey there, we counted 6 flies, 1 wasp, and a moth. That was it. This is obviously a small sample size, but it does suggest that insect numbers are declining. No insects, no anything else. Terminal stupidity. Drowning in our own anti-intellectualism waste like Isaac Asimov warned us about in the 70s. False vacuum decay. That our universe is not in fact in a stable state, but a metastable one where a transition from one to the other wipes the universe clean with zero ability to see it coming. Blink. Reality is gone on a universal scale. You thought you were important, or your family and city. Country even. The planet that you are familiar with, the moon and the night sky, the midday sun. The wider galaxy and our expanding electromagnetic shell telegraphing our location and history. Blink. Gone. Every star and every galaxy, every bit of space in between and beyond. All gone. Just like that. Flip. My question is, what about parts of the universe that has already expanded faster than the speed of light? We have parts of the universe we will never, ever see since the universe has expanded so much. Can the false vacuum reach there? I'm not a physicist, so maybe this is a dumb question. That Yellowstone caldera erupting would mess stuff up pretty bad. Don't die from being in the blast zone and you'll just die slowly from starvation as the ash would block the sun for a while, killing all crops. Phlegry fields in Italy are just as bad and in a more densely populated area.